Hey friends, I'm going to welcome you today to Mr. Mark's Classroom. My name is Mark Jones, and I have a great guest today who is going to help us think through what it is to have parenting helps. I mean, our parents seem to be coming to us all the time. I know mine are coming up and going, hey, do you have anything about? Matter of fact, recently I just had a dad that came up and he said, you know, my son's going in the 5th grade and they do that whole sex talk in school. I'd like to get kind of ahead of that. So what you got? And I was like, I have stuff for preschool. I have stuff for student youth ministry, but I'm going to have to do some research. And so I had to go and find some things. So I thought how great it would be if we could just interview someone who has pulled together, has been about getting helps for parents. And so let me introduce you to Debbie Barrett. Miss Debbie is a children's minister here in Oklahoma and absolutely hitting it out of the park. And I absolutely love her and respect the great work that she's done. Debbie, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I know that you earlier this year have already led a conference about gathering up some parenting helps. Can you kind of talk through that with us and give us a lifeline here?
Yes. How I started was parenting helps are good. You know, our parents come to us and they ask us all kinds of information. However, I think the important thing we need to know is what are the ages of the children that we're offering the help with? And so when I put together my conference, the first thing I talked about was what is the age group you want to target? Because obviously we have younger preschool, older, things like that. So that was the first. What is the target of the age group? So
yeah, I think that is a very wise thing because sometimes we just jump in there headstrong with whatever we know or information we have. Let's ask a few questions. So what is the age we're working with? Because you want it to be age appropriate.
Yes, age appropriate. And the second thing that I addressed was what needs do you want to address? What is it that you're dealing with? Is it physical? Is it mental, social, emotional? Is it spiritual? So what are the needs that we're wanting to address?
Okay, so I already said something about this dad with a 5th grader. And so part of my research with this was I just went ahead and asked a elementary counselor, what does that talk involve? What all are you working with when you do that? Because he's the one that's going around to the classes when it's time to do that. It's his responsibility. Mm-hmm. And he said, which I loved, he said, actually, it is maybe some anatomy things, not a lot, just some. And the most of the time is spent on hygiene and why that's important. And I was like, yeah, that is age appropriate. Yeah. These 5th graders they need that message. And so when I learned that, I was like, okay, that reframes this information where I'm afraid this dad was going to go in a little bit too far with his conversation to start with. And now that I know what's going to be said at school, I have a better idea of how to help dad. So I think you're right. We've got to get the information right.
Yes. And one of the things referring to that is I learned from a dear friend years ago, whenever kids start asking questions, the first question we always ask back is, well, tell me what you know. Because sometimes
that is gold.
Sometimes parents just jump in and the kids are like, that's not what I was talking about.
You just blew my head off.
Yeah. So ask, what do they want to know? So that's the first thing is the address. What needs do we need to address?
Right. So, and what do you know?
Yes. Tell me what you've heard, because they hear stuff from their friends and things like
do
that.
They ever?
Yes. And sometimes it's not all the way correct.
Most of the time it's not always great. But you're right. Excellent question. What have you heard? What do you know? I love it.
Yeah. The next question is, how do you want to use the information you gather? Do you want to have this information given out on a handout? Do you want it to be used in a parenting class? Do you want it to be given to the parents in a specific age graded class? So are you going to hand it through your Sunday school? So when you gather this information, who are you wanting to target? what are you wanting to target, and then how do you want to get it into their hands. So
Right. That is excellent. How are we going to get it in their hands? Because your delivery of that is pretty serious. You want to do well.
yes, yes. And so I broke it down into younger preschool, older preschool, and then when you get into your younger children, kind of like the 5 to 8 years old, and then
Okay.
older children 9 to 12, your preteens. And
Mhm.
so that's how I had it broken down. And we have so much information out there and resources that we can use.
Okay. Excellent. So maybe you could throw in some of those ideas of what those resources that you've liked.
The resources I like, from Lifeway, I think, and I just happen to have some here by me.
Well, that's handy.
One of my favorites is the Kids Ministry 101 magazine.
Oh, yes.
And I think it is great information in here. One of my favorite articles is one that Calista wrote. And it's basically talking to 5 things that kids ministers need to know about parents. And that's one of the things that I shared that day. And just something that we want them to know, or that parents need to know about us. Also, it was a George Barna book, Revolutionary Parenting.
Oh, yeah. Great book.
Yes, this one is a great book. Kids Ministry 101, is good. And so
It's a good book.
and then I have a lot of, just like the Lifeway magazines, Baby Life.
Right.
One that I really go back to, I think I have every one of their books, but from David and Sissy. I have,
And matter of fact, they have a brand new book, and I am hoping to even see one of them be a guest on our podcast or a video chat like this. It's Sissy Goff and David Thomas, and one of their new books is Raising Boys and Girls. And
yes,
I even follow them on Instagram, Raising Boys and Girls. I follow on Instagram.
yes.
I think that it's so practical. It's so
Mhm.
helpful. One of Sissy's books that I've devoured is that vintage modern parents vintage values. I may have said that backwards. I'm
No,
not
you're right. You're
okay.
right. Yeah, and I
It's
have all of those right here as well.
very practical, and anything I've ever taught out of that, like you could take a chapter of that and just kind of outline it and sit down and have a discussion group with your parents, and they would get so much value out of that. So often parents aren't reading any materials. So if you had just a simple article, or if you could just have a discussion group. Tonight we're going to talk about how to teach your kids to respect. Wow, you'll have a crowd.
Mhm.
You'll have people there who want to learn, and you don't have to know it all when you can just take the information, outline it, and talk through it, and tell them where you got it, and what
Right.
you're doing, because it might intrigue them to buy the book and read it. That'd be great.
Yes. And so, and they have the where you can go do the class style one. They have the DVDs for that. And for older preschool, one of the things that parents I like to ask, why do they always want to do it themselves? They wanted, I can do it. And so how we can help them, because a lot of times I hear, well, here, let me do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me do it. And now they say that, well, I can do it. And so helping them and teaching them how to do things on their own. The other one is kids ask a lot, when do I get to go to big church?
Oh, that's good. Okay, go ahead. I hope
Yes.
you're going to say what I think you're going to say.
Yes, I have a book here, When I Go to Church.
Yes.
And I have it right here on my
Yes,
shelf
that's
here.
it, by Kay Henry.
Yes.
And she's from Oklahoma too. I just have to plug that. But such a tremendous tool that we can get, and you can get that from Lifeway.com. Tell me how you've used it. What do you do?
Well, when I counsel with children, talking to them, they start asking questions. But then when I do a new Kids in the Pew,
Yes.
before we start doing that, I spend about 5 Sundays in a row in extended session. And we play different kinds of games. We talk about worship. We take an offering plate. We learn how to pass it. We learn how to shake hands and make eye contact and say hello back.
Good practice.
Yes, and then we do that, and then I have some adults that will go into worship with me, and they each have a little friend. So we'll stay in there until the welcome time, and then we'll go back. What did you learn? Who did you meet?
What'd you see?
What did you see? And so I have pictures of, I got a really neat thing from my friend Debbie Miller, and talking about the offering plate, going on a scavenger hunt. What do you find in the worship center? What are you going to see? And
so I like that. Good.
It is a lot of fun. And so we do that for about 5 or 6 weeks. And then when then I meet with the parents and say, this is what we've done. This is what we've learned. And then we go in and we introduce them to our church family.
Oh, so you actually take them in and introduce, the church gets to clap and welcome them.
Yes. Yeah. I give them a backpack with some really cool things in it.
Does it say new kid on the pew?
It says this bag belongs to a really cool kid named.
Yes. Okay. Because I said, the reason I said that is because I've done very similar to what you're saying, and we gave them a bag that had some things to help with during the service. And it said, I'm a new kid on the pew. So.
In fact, that's where I got it from, was from you, from our conference in Texas.
Oh, is that right?
Several years ago. So,
it was.
So it has been a hit. Yes. And so that's with our older kids. And the material, some other material is what we talked about, the Raising Boys and Girls When I Go to Church. And I really like the book, Holy Kids from Lifeway.
It's like an infographic all the way through it. So it's a quick read and very visual. So I think that's one of the reasons we all like it, but it's just chock full of great info.
And I think even with people just coming into children's ministry, it has great information, what to expect from this particular age
group. Right.
Yes. And how they are, maybe what they're thinking, things like that. So I think it's good.
And you know what? I think it's easy for us to say, yeah, I know how older preschoolers operate. But the truth is we probably have lost touch because technology and the way families are operating now, it may be very different from when you had a preschooler this age. And to get information like what you're talking about, and we gave this to all of our teachers, so that way they would be able to be more current in how they operate and what they're hearing and saying. So I wanted them to be informed. It's a good call.
Yes. One of the things also with the younger children, the questions from parents regarding friendships and behavior, their personality, and how to answer Bible questions. Because I think, too, sometimes parents are afraid to answer. They're afraid to give them the wrong answer.
I agree.
And I think, I don't know all the answers, and I'll be the first to tell you that. It's like, I don't know that, but let me find out. And so I think just helping parents feel comfortable that, you can do this. So I do want to back up for a second. We were talking about preschoolers. Sometimes when people come in, they'll have a younger preschooler and they'll want them to go to an older age class. Well, they have older siblings. They have, they're around older kids. But I think what we have to remember is they might be, but still mentally, they're 4 years old or they're 5 years old. So
right.
Even though they can communicate, we just have to remember they still want to do things that 4 and 5 year olds do.
That's right.
So,
very good. Very good point. I know it seems like sometimes we're the meanie because we don't let kids be with other kids that out of their age group or whatever, but there's really good reason for all of that, and know that and be able to articulate that. It helps.
Yes. Yeah. And so some of the material that, again, is what we've talked about. One of the things I like for younger children are the Moors and the Adventures. And I think the daily Bible study, getting them used to doing that, have it by their bed. They can read it every morning. On their way to school, they can read it to their parents. There's great opportunity to take that, and saying, oh, well, we don't have time.
Yeah.
But
that's a great suggestion, because I feel like the minivan has replaced the dining room table. Like I feel like more gathering is happening in the car. We just have to be purposeful to turn the radio off, or to make everybody turn their screens off so that we can talk, but to have them read their devotion on the way to school for the drop off. Wow. I've never thought of that. That's a really terrific idea. I think parents just pop that out there. I bet some parents will grab that up.
And when the kids get to take ownership of that, I mean, if they don't get up early enough and things like that, but the kids get to read it.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes there's a question at the bottom and the kids get to ask the parent that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that creates conversation.
Perfect.
So I think that is.
And those little devotion magazines are so much fun. They're written for that particular age group. So they're easy, they're colorful. For the youngest ones, and it really advances with them as they go. And that's a win. By the way, I have to say, I have a brand new book that we went ahead and bought a case of them, as we have children who are accepting Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That is called Foundations. And it is 52. It's 365. Well, I may be saying that wrong. Let me think about it. It may be 5 days a week, not 7 days a week of devotions, but it's colorful, one page, it's fantastic, but it's Foundations. It's terrific.
Well, good. I just think it's fun for when they can have that conversation on the way to school instead of it being screen time, radio time, but get to talk about it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yes. And another book that I really like is Transforming Children into Spiritual Champions.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Again, it's another George Barna book. It's good. But then when you get to your older kids.
I just want to say, Debbie, I'll take all of these recommendations that you're making to the best I can and put them in the show notes. So if people are like, what'd she just say? I got to write that down. No. Just go to Mr. Mark's classroom and you'll find this, and very easily you can you can just print it off.
Okay. And yes, I think that's a good idea, because there is a lot of information.
It's good stuff.
One of the things for older children, shepherding a child's heart, being able to, you can do that as a parenting class as well. Even parents taking it and reading it on their own. I think sometimes when parents are together, they find out they're not so alone. Sometimes parents think, I'm the only one going through this. But when you get a group of parents together and you're doing a parenting class, they find out that,
oh, you too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes, you know it, but they feel isolated.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes people don't, maybe it might be a pride thing. They don't want people to think that they're going through something. When I think, man, if someone knows, that's just more than they can be praying for me,
right?
Encouraging me and helping me. So, but I think
I think for us as the leader of that, to be transparent, to be able to say, we've had fails, all of my ideas haven't been the best. And, whenever we say, I regret that I ever did this or that or whatever, and then suddenly it opens up, okay, I identify with him because that same thing happened to us. It made a big, big difference.
Yes. And to know that, we do have the struggles, but to be able to go through it together. One of another book that David and Sissy have done is the Screens and Teens. And
I haven't seen that. That sounds awesome.
That's a good book too. Wow. Very good book. And for your older kids, we were talking about younger, but the Bible Express that we give out to 5th and 6th.
The devotional.
The devotional. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And I think too, helping kids to look forward to having their devotion, and to hold them accountable. What did you learn this week? you
Mhm.
know, from the parenting side as well. But I have Parenting in the Pew by Robbie Castleman. That
Ooh.
that is another good book.
Yeah.
Goodness, there's
Yeah, I believe every minister, every children's minister really needs to have a copy of Robbie's book because it really does give you some handles on why and how
mhm,
the raising your children in worship is so important. And you know what? It makes a big difference. And parents are scared of being embarrassed or what could happen in worship. And you could really debunk all of that.
mhm,
Let them see the joy, the blessing of
mhm.
having your children with you.
One thing that I like to encourage parents to do when I do the introducing the new kids in the pew, sit close. Don't sit in the back of the church. Sit
Which
close.
is where you want to go in case you have to make a quick getaway with a
Yes.
screaming kid. I get it. I get it.
There are things that they could
I have
do.
I have kids.
So sit close and say, this is what we're going to do. One of my favorite things that happened when I was a mom of young children, my oldest son, Jake, said, Mom, do we have to go to church tomorrow? And I said, no, we don't have to go. And he was like, we don't have to go tomorrow? And I said, nope, we get to. So
I knew.
get
I
ready,
love
get ready.
it.
But we
He
get
teed
to.
that up perfect.
Yes. But it was just like, and that's what I think that families need to know. We get to do this. God has given you children to raise, to love him and to serve him and to glorify him. And we get to do that. So
Oh,
yes.
what a great responsibility and a great privilege in
Yes.
order to raise your children in worship where they see you and what's important to you. And even more than that, they look around and they see Mr. Ed over there who is doing the same thing as Daddy's doing. And it validates this community of believers
Mm-hmm.
that we gather around the word.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah, it was good. And that's so now if you ask any of the kids in my children's ministry area or something, do we have to do this? They go, no, but we get to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just
Hey,
getting
something that I'm doing this year that goes along these lines, we have a first and second grade. Well, we also have a kindergarten, but we have a first and second grade dual hours. So they have their small group Bible study,
uh-huh.
and then the next hour there's a children's worship element that we have a team that pulls that off and does a good job. And so we have 3 worship hours, but this is the middle and the last,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm speaking of. So the deal is the children forever and ever have gone to their small group Bible study, and then they've gone to children's worship. And whenever you say, well, we want to invite you to take your children with you to worship, well, it happens to be during their small group Bible study. So that means they would only get the worship hour with their parents and this large group experience, which
Uh-huh.
is not the same. And so this year, we are giving the option of another small group study for those kiddos that go to worship with their parents. So maybe we had built in something that we're asking parents to do, but it was an impossibility because we
Mhm.
didn't offer the right thing. And so I'll have to let you know how that goes. But
Yes.
I'm hoping that we have parents who'll go, yes, finally. So just like us, they can go to worship and then go to their small group Bible study, where people know you, your teacher misses you when you're not there, and those important things. That doesn't usually happen in a larger group.
Right, right. And I think too, when you get to do that, because sometimes when kids and families come into church, they separate and go their different ways and don't meet back up until after it's over. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things that I think is important, that parents can show their kids what it is and how to do that.
Yeah,
So,
very good. Well, I don't mean to camp there too long because all
yes.
of the ideas that you gave were great. I have used that Baby Life whenever we've learned that
Yeah.
that magazine, whenever we've learned that a family is expecting a new baby and our nursery, or our bed baby class, those teachers would put together a gift, and that would be in there with a letter from me as well. And they would make that delivery and say, we're so excited about your new gift from God, and we want to give our best to help care for them and train them up, and making that initial contact. So it was great for like an expecting parents ministry. And then like the ideas with the devotions, how wonderful to pull all those in. Maybe, do you ever put anything out for parents, or even an email that says, hey parents, I came across this book, I thought you might like it?
Yes, I have. I
That
do.
would be great.
Yes. One time you did a challenge with the Bible, the kids' Bible.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
how you took that? Well,
I did that year, and I read it like to my daughter, and she didn't know it. I was reading my daily devotion, for those of you who didn't know, and I always wrote a note to her for that day in the margin, underlined verses that I thought was important, or I wanted her to know, and maybe a little note. Anyway, that was a great year for me. And when I gave that to her, she was like turning 18. And so it was a special gift.
Yeah. That
So
is
you
neat.
did something like that?
I did. I just encouraged families to get it, and we all read through it, and they were do that, either in the evening time or morning when they did their devotions. So I had several families participate in that.
Oh, wow.
Yes, when I come across something good, I will send out a letter. I'll send out an email just encouraging this is what I have. I have extras in my office that I like to loan out. So it's good being able to help and to encourage parents, and even for me as well as a parent. So.
Right. Yeah, I think we all need to remember to build that into our budget, or at least use some budgeted funds to buy some of these things that you could loan out.
Yes, I know, and they appreciate that. And so, with me getting ready to become a grandma in September,
Congratulations.
it's exciting. So just looking at stuff that, how can I, as a grandmother with my new baby grandson, what I can do. And so now looking at grandparenting, so.
A whole nother chapter to explore and to lead in. I love that, Debbie. How awesome. Thank you so much for what you shared with us today, because this is huge. It's a big help to hear what you're doing and how it's been effective and what you would recommend, because we all want to do well with that. Is there anything you want to add before we finish?
No, just thank you for the opportunity, and for parents that sometimes feel that, what do I do? There is something, and
we're not alone.
We're not alone.
You're saying exactly what I hear too.
Now, one of the books that I waited to the very end to present to the class was the Bible, that we can go to all kinds of links of looking at parenting, but God, when he breathed the scripture, that we can look at that and know that he knows exactly what we're doing.
That's right. It's our life. It's the life.
Yes.
So absolutely. How wonderful. Debbie, thank you so much for your time and sharing all this great stuff. I'll put all these things in the show notes so that people will be able to access them very easily. Okay. And listen, we're so glad that you came and joined us today. I just want to say, if you haven't gotten the podcast app downloaded out of the App Store, it's free. You can subscribe to Mr. Mark's Classroom podcast right there. Super easy. And you'll get a notice whenever a new one's put up each week, and be able to get even more information just like this. Hey, we are so thrilled with what you're doing in kids ministry. Your life in kids ministry is a gift. So go and make it count.